At the very end of the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, there's this beautiful story about Joseph and his brothers. If you know the story, his brothers, he's got 10 older brothers, they sold him into slavery. And he was taken to Egypt, where he had all these kind of struggles and adventures. Eventually there was a famine that brought his brothers up to Egypt to get some food that Joseph had actually provided through his leadership in Egypt. And they become dependent on their brother. And he recognizes them, he embraces them. It's amazing that he doesn't seek vengeance on them. But then after their father died, at the very end of the story, after their father died, they worry that Joseph might take vengeance on them now. If he asks for everything back that we took from him, they say, like, it's all over. They're afraid now that their father is gone, that he's not going to have that same kind of mercy. And so they go to him and they ask for something called forgiveness. It's the first time in the whole Bible that the word forgiveness gets used. It's the first story of forgiveness. And Joseph hears them ask this question and he weeps. And then they weep. And he says, don't be afraid. I'm gonna be your brother. You're forgiven. It's the first story in the Bible about forgiveness, and it's right at the end of the whole story of Genesis. And it's almost like forgiveness is what makes the rest of the story possible. There's no rest of the story if there can't be this forgiveness. One of the most important people in modern history was a leader in South Africa named Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela became the president of South Africa after apartheid, after the end of this rule of whites only in the country. Nelson Mandela was black, and he had been in prison for 27 years because he was working for justice back in the 60s. He was thrown in prison, stayed in prison all the way into the 90s. When he was let out, people wondered, how angry is he gonna be? He was made president, he was elected president, and one of the first things he did was ask for his jailer to be with him at the inauguration, because he knew there was no future if we can't have forgiveness. The next thing he did was he asked the Christian leader in the country, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, to lead this process about truth and reconciliation. As long as someone would tell the truth about what happened, they could be forgiven for their crimes. After that was over, Archbishop Tutu wrote a book, and it was called No Future Without Forgiveness. Forgiveness is such an important part of the biblical story. It's part of the Christian story, the Jewish story. It's what makes the future possible. We see it happen at camp all the time in these little cabins where we have these groups of friends who live together as brothers for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and they've got to learn how to care for each other, how to tell the truth to each other, and how to forgive. It's a beautiful gift, forgiveness. Here we are in this month of March. At the end of this month, we're coming into the season of Easter. It's a good time to reflect on that forgiveness that's at the heart of the gospel, that's at God's heart, that makes us alive and that makes the future possible. Let it be.